The scent of lavender had always been my anchor, a synonym for safety. But on that stifling July morning in 2026, it felt suffocating, almost toxic. I sat at the polished quartz island of our kitchen, staring at the wedding invitations stacked before me in pristine, millimeter-perfect piles. 140 pounds of heavy, cotton ivory paper, custom-ordered from an old-school print shop in New England. Centered on each card was a minimalist, embossed gold foil script that I had spent 3 sleepless nights choosing. Stephanie and Mason, July 25th. I lightly traced the raised lettering of my fiancé's name. I was 27, and for the past 4 years, my life had resembled a flawlessly curated social media feed. No harsh shadows, no tilted horizons. As a senior graphic designer at a top-tier Seattle agency, I craved order, predictability, and muted tones. I was the good daughter, the reliable, quiet one who never gave our parents a moment of anxiety. Unlike Lily. My younger sister was 22, and for as long as I could remember, our entire family dynamic had revolved around her whims, her tears, and her triumphs. If I viewed myself as a subtle, understated watercolor, Lily was a neon flash. Athletic, with a wild mane of blonde hair and a perpetual, infectious laugh, she worked as a personal trainer at an elite fitness club and treated life like an endless VIP after-party. The roots of what happened went deep into our childhood, buried in the soil of our parents' old suburban home. I still vividly remember my 10th birthday. I had spent 3 months saving my allowance for a professional set of pastel crayons. When my father finally handed me the box, Lily, who was only 5 at the time, threw a massive tantrum right in front of the guests. She stomped her feet, screamed that it wasn't fair, and ultimately snatched one of my brand new pastels, crushing it beneath her patent leather shoe with a look of pure satisfaction. My mother merely offered a soft, apologetic smile, wrapped her arms around a crying Lily, and turned to me. "Steph, sweetie, just let her have her way. You're the older sister. Lily is just so emotional, so vibrant. She has a hard time managing her feelings. But you're our sensible girl, you understand." That single phrase, "You're the older one, you understand," became the curse of my youth. Lily took my old toys without asking and broke them. She raided my closet, stretched out my clothes, and returned them stained. When I was 17, I fell in love for the first time with a boy from my class. I timidly shared the secret with my sister. The very next day, Lily showed up at my school, tracked him down, and put on a masterclass in flirtation. Laughing loudly, flipping her hair, giving him undivided attention. The boy, completely captivated by the dazzling Lily, forgot I even existed. I retreated inward, burying my quiet resentment deep beneath my ribs. The sickest part? Lily didn't even want him. She dumped him a week later. She just needed to prove to me, and to herself, that she could take anything that belonged to me. When Mason entered my life, Lily was indifferent at first. But the moment my father announced at a family dinner that he saw immense potential in Mason and was ready to heavily finance his upcoming architectural firm, a familiar, predatory spark ignited in my sister's eyes. "Steph, for God's sake, are you still obsessing over those invitations? We're going to be late for the final fitting." The front door slammed shut with a force that made the crystal glasses in the china cabinet rattle. Lily breezed into the kitchen, bringing with her the scent of citrus perfume and an overwhelming aura of restless, high-voltage energy. She was wearing tight athletic leggings and a cropped top, fresh from a morning training session. "I'm not obsessing, Lil, just making sure the ink on the envelopes didn't smudge," I replied, offering her a practiced smile and suppressing my usual irritation at her loud arrival. "Oh, please. Mason's relatives will toss those envelopes the second they open them. The only thing that matters is the dress. Come on, shake a leg, Mrs. Bradley-to-be." At the bridal boutique, Lily was on her best behavior. She reined in her usual sarcastic tongue, carefully smoothed out the 3-meter train of delicate tulle, and even pressed a hand to her lips when I stepped out of the fitting room. The woman staring back at me from the triple mirror array looked like a stranger. Fragile, regal, shrouded in a cloud of translucent veil. "You're going to be a breathtaking bride, Steph," Lily murmured softly, almost reverently, stepping up behind me and resting her chin on my shoulder. Our eyes met in the reflection. "Mason is so incredibly lucky, you have no idea." I felt a faint, sudden chill ripple down my spine. In the reflection of the glass, Lily wasn't looking at my dress, nor was she looking at the veil. Her gaze was locked onto the 2-carat diamond ring on my left hand. And in that gaze, there was no sisterly affection. There was only a hungry, deep-seated thirst for a rematch. Mason was 3 years older than me. An architect and co-founder of a rising boutique firm, he possessed that rare breed of masculine charisma that didn't require loud assertions. Calm, tall, with a permanent hint of 5 o'clock shadow and discerning gray eyes, he excelled at creating an illusion of absolute stability around himself. We had met 4 years prior at a charity gala hosted by my father's commercial real estate company. I was standing away from the buzzing crowd, sipping champagne and studying the blueprints of a new modernist building on a display board. "The proportions are slightly off in the right wing, don't you think?" A smooth baritone voice remarked beside my ear. I turned to find Mason looking at me. We ended up talking for 3 straight hours that night. It turned out we shared a mutual obsession with Scandinavian architecture, minimalism, and old black and white cinema. Mason's courtship was beautiful, but understated. He sent elegant arrangements of white calla lilies to my office, took me to private gallery openings, and, above all, listened to me talk about design for hours. 2 years later, we moved in together. Our 2-bedroom apartment, featuring panoramic windows overlooking the Cascade Mountains, looked like a minimalist exhibition. I had personally curated every shade of gray and beige to create a serene, perfect sanctuary for us. Mason often told me that I was his muse, his quiet harbor where he could decompress after grueling negotiations with demanding clients. "You're rare, Steph," he would whisper, running his fingers through my dark hair as we sat by the fireplace. "You don't have that modern artificiality, that desperate need to perform for the world. You're real. With you, I feel like I'm building something solid, something meant to last." I believed every syllable. I was profoundly happy. My father had been fiercely protective and skeptical of Mason at first, but seeing how I blossomed, he gradually thawed. The breakthrough came 8 months ago. Mason presented my father with a grand blueprint for an eco-friendly residential complex. It was a brilliant, ambitious project, but it required an astronomical influx of capital. "If you make my daughter happy, Mason, I'll help you get this firm off the ground," my dad had said, clapping him on the back after a successful pitch. "My fund will bankroll the entire first phase of development. Consider it my wedding gift to you both. The lawyers will have the final contracts ready by the end of July." 2 weeks after that conversation, Mason whisked me away to Cancun. There, on the rooftop of a luxury resort under a canopy of stars and the roar of the ocean, he dropped to one knee and presented a navy velvet box. "Marry me, Steph. Let's build our own world," he whispered. I wept tears of pure joy as I said yes. Everything was too perfect. So perfect that it felt like a glass house, exquisite, transparent, but fatally fragile if anyone decided to throw a stone. And someone was already picking out the heaviest rock. The first fractures in the seamless facade of our lives appeared 2 months before the wedding. Initially, they were microscopic scratches that I, entirely consumed by wedding prep, stubbornly chalked up to stress and sheer exhaustion. It began on a warm Thursday evening in mid-May. We decided to have dinner on our terrace, ordering takeout from our favorite Thai spot. The conversation naturally drifted toward our honeymoon. Mason, who had recently become hyper-focused on his social status, was fiercely pushing for a luxury resort in Mykonos. "Steph, it's the place to be this season," he argued, flipping through a glossy hotel brochure. "Every major developer on the West Coast will be there. It's a goldmine for networking before we launch the new project. Infinity pools, private beaches, high-end parties." I, whose head was already throbbing from endless calls with florists and caterers, sighed softly and set my chopsticks down. "Mace, can we maybe skip Mykonos?" The crowds, the influencers, the constant flashing lights. I'm just so drained. What if we rent a small, secluded cabin in Norway instead? Mountains, fjords, morning mist, and absolutely no one else, just you and me. We can read, walk by the water, and just breathe. Mason snapped the brochure shut against the table. Across his usually handsome, well-groomed face, a flash of deep, almost contemptuous irritation flickered, an expression I had never seen on him in 4 years. Are you seriously bringing that suffocating introvert energy into this again, Stephanie? His tone was sharp, cutting. Your instinct is always to crawl into some godforsaken hole, lock yourself in a closet, and rot away in the fog just to avoid being seen by society. You need to learn how to live at full throttle to match the room instead of stagnating like an old maid. I froze, my glass of water halfway to my lips. Mason's words stung, but what paralyzed me was the phrasing itself. Suffocating introvert energy. I remembered, with absolute clarity, sitting in the back of Lily's car just 3 days prior, complaining about the wedding madness. I had laughed at myself, telling her, "Lil, I swear I'm getting old. My suffocating introvert energy is taking over. I just want to escape all these guests and hide in some Norwegian hole." Lily had laughed loudly, taken a drag from her vape, and replied, "Yeah, Steph, you really can be pretty suffocating sometimes." But I had never said those words to Mason. I had never used that specific phrasing around him. Where did a 30-year-old corporate architect pick up the exact, hyper-specific jargon of my 22-year-old sister? A week later, the second red flag flew. I had a massive argument with my mother. She was demanding a heavy, pompous live orchestra and a traditional prime steakhouse menu for the reception. I, looking at it through a designer's lens, envisioned something entirely different. A light, open-air garden reception, abundant greenery, warm Edison bulb string lights, and an indie pop playlist in the background. The argument ended with my mother crying, claiming I had no respect for family traditions, and me hanging up in frustration. I came home that evening completely hollowed out. I just wanted comfort. Mason was in the living room, hunched over his laptop, reviewing blueprints. I walked up quietly behind him, wrapped my arms around his shoulders, and buried my face in his neck, aching for a familiar word of reassurance. Mason didn't return the embrace. He didn't even look away from his screen. He merely shifted slightly, as if my touch were an inconvenience to his workflow. "Look, Steph." His voice was flat, clinical. "Your habit of making a cheap tragedy out of every little thing and constantly whining that nobody in this life understands you is getting exhausting. Your mom just wants a respectable, high-status wedding so she doesn't look bad in front of her peers. And you're acting like a spoiled, selfish brat who expects everyone to cater to her whims." I stepped back, feeling as though I had been struck in the face. My breath caught in my throat. Making a cheap tragedy and "nobody in this life understands you." Those were the exact words, down to the literal punctuation, of a long, tearful text message I had sent to Lily via iMessage 2 hours earlier while sitting in my car in my office parking lot. I had been looking for a sister's empathy. I had written, "Mom is suffocating me with this menu. I'm literally crying in my car. I feel like nobody in this life understands me, and I know I'm probably just making a cheap tragedy out of nothing, but it hurts so bad." I stood in the center of our minimalist living room, staring at the broad expanse of Mason's back. A cold, terrifying realization bloomed in my chest. It felt as though a ghost had moved into my home, an invisible entity that was reading my thoughts, stealing my rawest vulnerabilities, and feeding them directly into my fiancé's mouth. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring blankly at the ceiling. Mason slept soundly beside me, his back turned to me. "I'm losing my mind," I told myself, pressing my palms against my temples. "It's just pre-wedding psychosis." I must have repeated those phrases out loud to him while we were cooking dinner or watching TV. My brain is just hyper-focusing on a coincidence. And Lily loves me. She's just stressed about the wedding and probably talking to Mason to help him figure out how to handle my moods. Yes, that's it. They're just becoming friends." And they were spending an extraordinary amount of time together. My sister would pop by our apartment for 5 minutes to drop off design magazines or fitness supplements. Mason routinely picked her up from her gym in the evenings when her temperamental Mini Cooper broke down yet again. In fact, I was the one who usually suggested it. "Mace, Lily's car is acting up at the gym again. Can you swing by and grab her? It's right on your commute." I had opened the passenger door of his car for the person who was actively erasing my identity, and I had done it with a smile. The second week of June brought a relentless gray Seattle drizzle. Our panoramic windows were slick with thousands of tiny droplets, dissolving the peaks of the Cascade Mountains into faint charcoal ghosts. Inside, everything appeared unchanged, immaculate, balanced, and sterile. But to me, every corner of that apartment now harbored a faint, suffocating trace of an uninvited presence. Paranoia isn't the belief that you're being watched. Paranoia is the moment you begin to see the hidden seams in a reality you once thought was a single, unbroken tapestry. I became a human scanner. My designer's eye, trained to spot a 1-pixel misalignment in a font, began evaluating our home with terrifying precision. I noticed that my silk robe in the master bath wasn't hanging at its usual angle. I noticed that the steam wand on our espresso machine was turned to the left, even though Mason always left it perfectly centered. Lily always turned it left when she frothed her almond milk. Every evening became a psychological tightrope. Mason would come home from a construction site around 8, smelling of high-end cologne, good tobacco, and the crisp rain. He would kick off his Oxfords, wrap his arms around my waist, and bury his face in my hair. "God, Steph, what a brutal day," he would exhale, pulling me close. "The city inspectors are bleeding me dry. I'm just glad you're here when I get back. You're my quiet space." I used to melt when he said that. Now, I stood inside his embrace as rigid and unyielding as a steel rod, consciously regulating the rhythm of my breath. It felt like if I relaxed for even a fraction of a second, I would vomit right onto his impeccably pressed shirt. "Hungry?" I would ask, keeping my voice perfectly dialed into my standard frequency of gentle affection. "Yeah, let's just order sushi. Oh, and by the way..." Mason would walk into the living room, carelessly tossing his leather briefcase onto the sofa. "I was thinking about your bachelorette party. Your mom mentioned you wanted some quiet weekend at a countryside spa. Honestly, Steph, that sounds mind-numbing. You need to let loose. Let Lily handle the planning in the city. She knows all the hot spots, the clubs. Let it be a surprise. Just trust her on this." I turned toward the kitchen stove so Mason wouldn't see my pupils dilate with a sudden spike of adrenaline. "Just trust her." A wave of hot, dark fury surged up from my stomach, but I clamped down on it, forcing it deep beneath my ribs. The pattern was undeniable now. These weren't Mason's casual suggestions. This was a systematic, gentle breaking-in process. Lily was planting the seeds in Mason's head, and Mason was delivering them to me, spinning a tight web of manipulation around my life. They wanted me to feel small, indecisive, entirely dependent on their guidance. The groundwork for my psychological execution was being laid, and my total surrender was supposed to be just around the corner. I needed access. I needed cold, hard, irrefutable proof, not just linguistic theories and behavioral anomalies. And the universe handed me that exact opportunity on Saturday, June 15th. Saturday morning arrived with a rare burst of brilliant sunshine. Lily showed up unannounced around 11, claiming she was there to help me finalize the seating chart for the reception tables. In reality, the moment she stepped across the threshold, I caught the swift, evaluative look she shot toward Mason, who was sitting at the breakfast bar with his laptop. A microspark passed between them, a subtle nod, a half-smile that anyone else would have dismissed as family warmth. Not me. "Hey, sis!" Lily kissed my cheek, bringing a heavy cloud of her citrus perfume into the room. "Ready to tackle this logistical nightmare? Mason, hey, can you give me a lift to the gym after this? My Mini is making a noise like a dying swan." "Of course, Lil, no problem." Mason raised his glass of orange juice, flashing his signature charm. "Just finishing up a material specification." We set up in the kitchen. Lily spread a large poster board, colored sticky notes, and markers across the white quartz island. Her iPad, her primary work tablet in a scuffed silicone case, lay right beside her, screen up. She checked it periodically, cross-referencing the guest list I had emailed her. 40 minutes in, as the atmosphere in the kitchen grew dense with Lily's performative cheer, my sister suddenly gasped and jumped out of her stool. "Oh, crap! I left the purple markers in my car. We agreed to color code your extended family in purple so we can seat them as far from my friends as humanly possible. I'll be right back. It'll take me 2 seconds." Lily sprinted out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her, leaving her tablet sitting wide open on the counter. She had grown lazy in her security. She was entirely convinced that no one in this house would ever violate her privacy. She built her safety on her profound contempt for my character. She thought I was too good, too properly bred to ever stoop to spying. And that was her fatal mistake. The moment her footsteps faded down the hallway, I glanced over at Mason. He had his noise-canceling headphones on, entirely absorbed in his blueprints, his finger tapping the desk to the rhythm of an invisible beat. He was oblivious. I stepped up to the iPad. My heart wasn't racing. On the contrary, it felt as though my pulse slowed down, dropping me into that icy, hyper-focused state a surgeon enters before making the first incision. I touched the glass. The screen was currently displaying her email inbox. I quickly swiped up, closing the app, and tapped the iMessage icon. At the very top of the chat history, pinned right below her immediate contacts, was a thread labeled simply, M. The avatar was a photo of Mason taken during our trip to Colorado. I tapped the thread. The first thing my eyes locked onto was a message sent a mere 20 minutes ago, while the three of us were sitting in the exact same apartment. "Is she throwing her usual passive-aggressive tantrum over the seating chart?" Lily had written. "God, Mace, she is so mind-numbing. My teeth literally ache just looking at her perfect, boring face. I can't stand her when she gets like this." Mason's reply had landed 2 minutes later. "Hang in there, baby. You know what we're playing for. I can't wait for tonight. I'll head over to your gym after this pathetic family theater is over, and we can finally unwind. Champagne's on me." I felt something click shut inside my soul. The final circuit was complete. No more doubts. No room for a generous misunderstanding. Just the raw, naked, hideous truth. My thumb began flicking rapidly, scrolling upward through the history. My fingers danced across the glass, unearthing a cavern of filth that Mason and I had apparently been living in for the past 7 months. The log stretched all the way back to January 2026. There was February. I had contracted a vicious strain of the flu, running a massive fever, and had begged Mason to bring me medicine from the pharmacy. Lily's text to Mason. "Is she crying again? Seriously, it's just a cold. She's such a drama queen. Just come over to my place. I made your favorite ribeye. Let her deal with her sickness in peace. It builds character." Mason's reply. "On my way, beautiful. Told her I'm trapped at a site inspection in Olympia. See you in 30. There was March. A photograph from the boutique Omnia resort out of town. Mason had allegedly gone there for a 3-day architectural convention. The photo showed Lily, posing in an oversized white terrycloth robe against a panoramic window overlooking the valley. In the background, clearly visible in the unmade king-sized bed, was Mason, fast asleep. Lily's caption, "My architect builds the absolute best nights." But the truly chilling material began in April, the exact window when my father had officially corporate-backed Mason's new independent venture with a $5 million cash injection. Mason had written to Lily, "The old man took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. The development funds are secured. Miller's attorneys will clear the escrow account the second Stephanie and I sign the marriage certificate. It's her dowry. The beauty of it is that the contract routes the cash into my holding firm, not my personal account, so it's completely insulated from marital asset division in a divorce. We are getting through this wedding, Lil. Just hold on a little longer. Being around Steph feels like drowning in a swamp. She's so profoundly dull. But those $5 million will set us up for life. We'll sign the prenup on her terms after the ceremony so she doesn't suspect a thing. 6 months later, I'll file for divorce, citing her psychological instability. You'll help me document her unraveling, right? Lily's response made my stomach heave with violent revulsion. Duh, of course, love. I'm already building the file. I'll get her completely wasted at the bachelorette party and take some hilarious videos of her losing her mind. My mom already thinks she's antisocial and unstable, so she'll buy it without a second thought. We are taking her for everything she has. I stood in the center of my flawless white kitchen, bathed in the blinding light of a beautiful July sun, and understood that I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being hunted. I was being set up to be robbed, humiliated, and institutionalized by my own sister and the man I slept next to every night. They were meticulously engineering my psychological execution. The front door clicked open. I instantly locked the iPad, dropped it back onto the counter in the precise angle it had been lying, and stepped back toward the sink. I turned on the faucet, grabbed a sponge, and began washing my coffee mug. My movements were fluid, my expression a mask of serene composure. Ugh, took forever! Some moron double-parked me. Lily burst into the kitchen, slightly out of breath, brandishing the markers. All right, Steph, where were we? I turned off the tap, took a linen towel, and slowly dried my hands. I turned to face my sister, looking directly into her eyes. Those bright blue eyes that looked so much like my own, holding nothing but cheap imitation warmth. Lilis, I'm so sorry, I said softly, offering a faint smile. I just got a high-priority alert on my phone from my creative director. A major client in Vancouver rejected the branding revisions. I have to get to the agency right now. Let's push the seating chart to Monday, okay? Oh, bummer! A flash of victory and profound relief washed over Lily's face. The last thing she wanted was to waste a gorgeous Saturday doing paperwork for my wedding. Well, duty calls. Can Mason still drop me at the gym then? Mace, you ready? Mason pulled off his headphones, looking up from his laptop, and flashed his most charming, comforting smile. Yeah, Lil, absolutely. Just let me grab my keys. Steph, you need me to pick up anything for dinner on my way back? No, Mason, I don't need a thing, I replied, watching him take his key fob off the hook. I have everything I need. The moment the front door latched shut, I didn't break down. I didn't collapse onto the floor. I walked calmly to the window, watching them walk out into the parking lot. I watched Mason open the passenger door of his black SUV for Lily. Lily climbed in, but before she pulled the door shut, Mason leaned down quickly, checking his surroundings, and kissed her squarely on the mouth. Right underneath the windows of our home. I stepped away from the glass, opened my laptop, and created a new encrypted folder. I named it with a single clinical word: Project Demolition. My time for crying was over. The era of engineering had begun. Monday, July 17th. 8 days until the wedding. I sat in a low-lit, out-of-the-way coffee house on the fringes of the city, miles away from anyone who might recognize me. My tea sat untouched, cold. Across the small wooden table sat Olivia, our high-end wedding coordinator. Olivia was a seasoned veteran of the industry, a woman with iron nerves who had managed everything from runaway brides to fistfights between in-laws. But what I was telling her right now made her freeze, lower her reading glasses, and shut her tablet. Steph. Olivia's voice was low, her eyes scanning my pale but terrifyingly steady face. Do you understand the gravity of what you're asking? Canceling vendor contracts 7 days before a high-profile wedding is an absolute bloodbath. The cancellation penalties alone will devour nearly 80% of the total budget. The venue, the catering, the floral designers, they've already procured materials and blocked their schedules. You will lose $40,000 out of pocket. It just vanishes. I am aware, Olivia. I didn't blink. The funds will be drawn from my personal premarital savings account. My father doesn't know, and no one else can find out. I will sign the non-disclosure waivers and release forms right now. But why play this game? Olivia genuinely could not fathom the strategy. If you have the proof, why not throw him out of the apartment tonight? Cancel it publicly and be done with it." I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to a sharp, icy whisper. "Because if I do it tonight, Mason has time to construct a counter-narrative. He will run to my father, he will activate Lily, and they will play the wedding stress nervous breakdown card they've been practicing in their texts. My mother will back them to avoid a public scandal. Mason will walk away clean, find another target, and keep his reputation. No, Olivia, I don't want to just cancel a wedding. I want them to experience the exact, paralyzing horror I felt when I opened that tablet. I want a total, public demolition of his career and her life. And I want them to watch it happen in real time." Olivia stared at me for several long seconds, and then a slow, deeply respectful smirk spread across her face. She realized she wasn't dealing with a heartbroken bride. She was dealing with a director about to stage her absolute masterpiece. "Understood, Stephanie. Not a single vendor will breathe a word. I will personally ensure the venue owners and the executive chef keep this locked down. As far as Mason Bradley and your mother are concerned, the train is running on time until Friday evening." "Perfect. Let Lily keep performing her bachelorette surprise. Let my mother obsess over the menu. Let Mason believe he owns my future." After my meeting with Olivia, I drove to a self-storage facility in an industrial district across town. I rented a climate-controlled unit, paying in cash under a temporary business alias. The next 3 days were a masterclass in covert logistics. It was the most exhausting, nerve-wracking segment of my plan. I had to systematically strip my presence out of our shared apartment without Mason noticing a single change. Our home was designed around strict minimalism. Every object occupied a specific, calculated space. A missing vase or a bare shelf would trigger alarms. I operated like a safecracker. Every day, the moment Mason left for his office, I packed precisely 2 or 3 nondescript cardboard boxes. I targeted only what belonged to me exclusively: my professional digital drawing tablets, the external hard drives containing my entire 6-year design portfolio, my legal documents, my birth certificate, my high-end art books, the wardrobe I didn't use on a daily basis, and most importantly, the vintage mahogany jewelry box containing my grandmother's heirloom estate pieces. I shuttled the boxes to the storage unit during my lunch breaks. Every evening, before Mason returned, I meticulously recalibrated the geometry of our closets. I spaced his remaining suits wider, adjusting the hangers so the wardrobe didn't look hollowed out. In the master bathroom, I left empty bottles of my expensive skin creams and perfumes on the shelves, ensuring that a casual glance would suggest everything was perfectly normal. Every night, Mason came home, ate the dinners I prepared, watched television, and completely failed to notice that the world around him was dying, transforming into a hollow, paper-thin stage set. He was too intoxicated by the thought of my father's $5 million. On Wednesday night, Lily fired off a text to our family group chat, which included me, Mason, and our mother. "Steph, Mace, Mommy, everything is officially locked down for Friday. I secured the private VIP lounge at Eclipse for the Bachelorette. It's going to be an absolute movie. Get ready, girls, we are letting loose." My mother immediately flooded the thread with ecstatic emojis. "Lily, you are an absolute angel. Steffi, you must wear that white silk slip dress we bought last month. You need to look like the queen you are." Mason added his own touch. "Oh yeah, tear that place apart, girls. My girl deserves a massive night out after all these stressful weeks. Lil, you're the best maid of honor a guy could ask for." I sat on the living room sofa, feeling Mason's heavy, warm arm wrap securely around my shoulders. He smelled of wealth and certainty. I pulled out my phone and typed into the chat, "Thank you, Lily. You've truly done more for this wedding than anyone could have ever anticipated. I will never forget it. See you Friday." Mason kissed the top of my head. "See? And you were stressing out," he said softly. "Everything is falling into place perfectly." "Yes, Mason." I closed my eyes, resting my head against his chest so he wouldn't see the dead, triumphant light in my eyes. "Everything is falling into place." Thursday, July 18th, 24 hours before detonation. I sat in my agency's office long after the cleaning crew had finished their rounds. The building was dead silent, save for the hum of the HVAC and the soft glow of my 27-inch monitor. Open on my screen was a high-end graphic layout suite, but I wasn't designing a corporate annual report or a luxury brand identity. I was finalizing a 30-page document that I would later refer to as my visual masterpiece. Every single page was engineered with the precision of a forensic scientist. I utilized a stark, unforgiving black and white color palette to strip away any emotional distraction. On the cover page, I placed our most famous engagement portrait, the one taken on the beaches of Cancun. Mason was carrying me through the surf, both of us laughing hysterically against a cinematic sunset. Across that glossy commercial image of love, I overlaid a heavy, aggressive, brutalist black font. Anatomy of a Betrayal. Why the wedding of Mason Bradley and Stephanie Miller no longer exists. I systematically, page by page, laid out the chronology of their deceit. Section 1. The Flu Protocol. Here were the side-by-side screenshots from February, my text messages gasping for breath with a 103-degree fever, juxtaposed with Lily's texts detailing the ribeye steak she was searing for Mason at her apartment. Section 2. The Architecture of Deception. High-resolution close-ups of Lily posing in the Omnia Resort robe, with the digital metadata, timestamps, and geolocation tags expanded and highlighted in the margins. Section 3. The $5 million valuation. The core of the document. I used a digital red grease pencil to circle Mason's exact words regarding his strategy to bypass the prenup, seize my father's commercial grant, and systematically gaslight me into a mental facility 6 months into the marriage. Beneath each screenshot, I appended brief, clinical, entirely factual commentary. No capital letters, no hysterical exclamation points, no insults. Just cold, journalistic prose. The contrast between the visceral filth of their text messages and my freezing academic tone was devastating. The document read like a federal grand jury indictment. I exported the file into a high-resolution, uncompressed PDF. It clocked in at exactly 45 megabytes. Perfect clarity. Every pixel of their betrayal, every vile word Lily and Mason had exchanged, was crisp and legible. I transferred the file to an encrypted flash drive, closed my laptop, and slipped it into my tote bag. Right on cue, my phone vibrated on the desk. It was Mason. "Hey, Mace!" My voice was soft, slightly sleepy, the perfect imitation of an exhausted fiancé. "Hey, beautiful. I wrapped up at the firm early. I was thinking, what if I swing by and pick you up? We could grab dinner at that waterfront spot we love. Celebrate our last official Thursday night as single people?" A wave of intense nausea rolled through me, but I didn't falter. Our last single night. He was trying to keep me placated until the final hour. "Oh, Mace, that's incredibly sweet." I let a heavy sigh of disappointment slip through. "But I can't. My creative director dumped a massive end-of-quarter investor deck on my desk. I'm going to be glued to this monitor until midnight at least. Go grab some food without me, okay? Get some sleep. I want you rested before the madness starts tomorrow." "Ah, that sucks. Total drag." Mason's voice carried a brilliant imitation of disappointment, but underneath it, I heard the sharp, clear note of relief. He had just been handed a free evening, and I knew exactly where he would spend it. "All right, don't kill yourself over work, Steph. Love you." "Love you too, Mason. See you tomorrow." I set the phone down. My hands were perfectly still. My entire past, 4 years of absolute trust, shared dreams, and a constructed future, had just been reduced to a 45-megabyte digital bomb. Friday, July 19th, 9 a.m. Mason had left the apartment 40 minutes earlier. He was in an incandescent mood, whistling a jazz tune, carefully styling his hair in the mirror, wearing his favorite designer denim. Before he walked out, he wrapped his arms around me tightly and kissed my forehead. "All right, Steph. Today's your day. Go wild with the girls tonight. Sleep in tomorrow, and Monday, your dad and I sign the final papers for the firm. Life is pretty spectacular, isn't it?" absolutely spectacular, Mason. You have no idea, I replied, looking him dead in the eyes. The moment his SUV cleared the subterranean parking garage gate, I initiated the final sequence. I pulled out my burner phone. Through a premium concierge app, I summoned a white-glove professional moving crew and an industrial-grade deep cleaning service. I had authorized a double-rate cash premium for immediate dispatch. By 10 in the morning, our apartment was a military operation. 4 large men in clean jumpsuits were rapidly, efficiently boxing up the remaining items I hadn't moved myself. My designer accent chairs, the custom artwork I had paid for with my own salary, my remaining wardrobe, my personal books, everything vanished into the back of an unmarked moving van. I stood in the center of the clearing space, directing traffic with the cold precision of an air traffic controller. The master bedroom boxes go into van 1. The bathroom vanity items and cosmetics go straight into the industrial trash bags, I ordered calmly. Then, the cleaning crew took over. 3 women armed with commercial vacuums and neutralizing chemicals spent 2 hours scrubbing the apartment until it was sterile. They erased every biological trace of my existence. They eliminated my scent, polished the mirrors I had looked into until they shrieked, and disposed of my toothbrush and hairbrushes. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the apartment resembled a cold, hollow, high-end hotel suite. On the long walnut credenza in the master bedroom, a room now entirely devoid of my life, lay exactly 3 objects, aligned in a perfect geometric line. The 2-carat platinum diamond ring from Cancun, my brass key ring for the apartment door, my old personal iPhone, factory reset to its original screen. I took one final lap around the space. The emptiness didn't frighten me. It was an exact mirror of my internal state, a clean canvas, entirely purged of their footprints. I went down to the garage, climbed into my rented sedan, where my travel luggage was already secured in the trunk, and stopped by the building's concierge desk. "Good afternoon, Mark," I said, sliding a crisp, substantial cash tip across the marble counter toward the elderly concierge. "Could you ensure Mason Bradley receives this package the moment he walks into the lobby tonight? Tell him it's a pre-wedding gift from his bride." "Of course, Miss Miller. Congratulations on the big day tomorrow. You're going to be a gorgeous bride," Mark beamed. "Thank you, Mark, but there isn't going to be a wedding." I got into my car, drove 3 blocks away, pulled into a quiet coffee shop parking lot, and flipped open my laptop. The dashboard clock read exactly 4 p.m. Seattle rush hour was beginning. The wedding WhatsApp group chat, titled Bradley and Miller Wedding 2026, was a war zone of notifications. There were 72 participants, the entire extended Miller and Bradley families, Mason's college fraternity brothers, Lily's fitness inner circle, my agency colleagues, and the event staff. Aunt Sarah was uploading photos of hair trials. My mother was typing in frantic capital letters. "Reminder to everyone about the dress code. Champagne and blush pink only. Absolutely no black." Mason's friends were dropping crude bachelor party memes about the death of his freedom. Lily Miller had checked in 5 minutes prior. "Girls, VIP lounge at Eclipse is locked for 7 p.m. Limo is stocked, champagne is on ice. Steph, you ready to burn this city down?" I took a deep, rhythmic breath. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I plugged in the flash drive containing the file. My heart rate was a steady 60 beats per minute. Zero fear. Total, crystal-clear cognitive clarity. I attached the file, anatomy_oev_a_betrayal.pdf, to the chat window and typed out the text I had memorized over the last 7 days. "Dear family, friends, colleagues, and guests, our wedding, scheduled for next Saturday, is officially and permanently canceled. All reservations for the venue, catering, and production were dissolved by me personally 3 days ago. The true and sole reason for this decision is laid out in absolute, irrefutable detail with supporting evidence in the attached document below. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to my fiancé, Mason Bradley, and my beloved younger sister, Lily Miller. For the past 7 months, they have worked tirelessly behind my back to ensure my eyes were open to reality. Mason, your personal belongings have been partially disposed of and partially left with the concierge. Your ring and keys are on the credenza in an empty apartment. You will never touch a single dollar of my father's $5 million. Lily, I sincerely hope that the expensive lace lingerie and those nights at the Omnia Resort were worth losing a sister and bringing absolute, permanent disgrace upon our family name. Thank you, everyone. Please do not attempt to contact me. This number is already permanently deactivated. I held my index finger over the Enter key. For a fraction of a second, ghosts of the past flickered across my mind. Mason holding me on the waterfront. Lily as a little girl asking me to help her paint her nails. But that brief surge of sentimentality was instantly pulverized by the memory of his text on the tablet. Steph feels like drowning in a swamp, she's so dull. We are taking her for everything she has. Goodbye, rats, I whispered into the quiet car, and struck Enter. The 45-megabyte file surged into the group chat. I sat perfectly still for exactly 10 seconds, watching the single gray checks transform into double gray checks across the 72 accounts. It was out. Delivered. I shut the laptop, popped the SIM card out of my iPhone, snapped the plastic chip in half, and tossed it out the window into a passing city garbage truck. I flipped my new phone into airplane mode. I started the engine of my rental car and navigated towards Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. I held a one-way ticket to Prague with a layover at London Heathrow. My new life was starting. At that exact moment, inside the Nest, a high-end rooftop lounge in downtown Seattle, Mason Bradley was laughing uproariously, raising a glass of 20-year-old single malt scotch. He was flanked by his junior partners and close friends from the country club. They were celebrating his upcoming corporate ascension. "To your new kingdom, Mace! And to Old Man Miller's $5 million! Your firm is about to dominate the Pacific Northwest!" David shouted, slapping Mason on the back. "Thanks, boys. It's been a long, calculated road, but I finally reached the summit," Mason grinned, taking a smooth sip of his scotch. On the polished mahogany table, his iPhone suddenly erupted. The screen lit up. One notification. 3, 8, 15. Within 3 seconds, the phone was displaying a cascading waterfall of incoming alerts. The vibration hummed against the wood in a continuous, violent buzz. "Whoa, looks like the bachelorette party started early. Are the girls sending previews?" One of the partners laughed. With a smug, indulgent grin, Mason picked up the device, unlocked it, and opened WhatsApp. The grin vanished so violently, it looked as though he had been hit with a taser. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin an ash-gray, dead hue. He read my paragraph, his eyes widening in pure, primal terror. "This is impossible. This is some sick joke," he stammered, his voice dropping an octave. He tapped the PDF link. The document loaded instantly. On the very first page, dominating the screen, was a high-resolution screenshot of his April exchange with Lily, where he referred to me as a swamp and outlined his timeline for committing me to a psychiatric ward. A dead, suffocating silence fell over the table. Mason's friends, who had all opened their own phones by now, turned pale, their eyes darting from their screens to Mason. The celebratory energy evaporated. In its place was a profound, visceral disgust. "Mason, did you actually write this shit?" David asked quietly, instinctively sliding further down the leather banister away from him. Mason couldn't speak. He bolted upright, knocking his scotch glass over, spilling the amber liquid across his expensive denim, and ran for the exit. His phone was now ringing continuously. The caller ID flashed. Robert Miller, father. Mason answered with trembling hands, his voice cracked and frantic. Robert, listen to me. I can explain everything. It's a hack. It's Photoshop. Stephanie has had a mental breakdown. It's not what it looks like." "Shut your mouth, you parasite." The voice of Robert Miller, a commercial titan usually known for his calculated, even-keeled diplomacy, sounded like a circular saw cutting through dry bone. "I read the file. Every single page. Your career in this city is dead, Bradley. My legal team has already voided the corporate grant and the development charters. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, My property managers will lock your firm out of your offices and throw your blueprints into the street. If I ever see your face within a mile of my daughter, my assets, or my family again, I will bury you so deep the dogs won't find you. You are nothing." The line went dead. Mason stood on the scorching concrete of the Seattle sidewalk, gasping for air like a drowning man as his phone continued to self-destruct in his hand. A text from Lily popped up. She was calling him repeatedly, typing in an unhinged, incoherent panic. "Mason! My mom read the chat. My dad threw me out of the house. He froze every single one of my cards. Oh my God, what do we do? Mason, answer me!" Mason stared at the glowing screen, and inside his chest, any remaining illusion of affection for Lily instantly mutated into a vicious, white-hot hatred. He realized that because of her sheer stupidity and her forgotten iPad, he had just lost his empire, his reputation, his wealth, and his future. He declined her call and blocked her number. Their grand, unstoppable passion died the exact second the $5 million vanished into thin air. Exactly 1 year later, July 2027. Prague welcomed the morning with a crisp, cool air, washed clean by a midnight rain. I sat at my favorite corner table on the terrace of a small, hidden cafe in the Vinohrady district. Before me sat a pristine espresso and a fresh almond croissant. An open sketchbook lay on my lap, where I was casually rendering the Gothic facade of an old church visible at the end of a cobblestone alley. I had turned 28. Over the past 12 months, I had transformed completely. I had chopped my long dark hair into a sleek, razor-sharp bob, abandoned my closet of muted beiges for bold, vibrant colors, and most importantly, I had learned to smile not out of social obligation, but because I was genuinely content. My new European creative agency had welcomed me with open arms. My American portfolio, combined with my clinical execution and unique visual style, had opened every door. I was no longer anyone's muse. I was an independent, formidable force. This year had not been easy. The first 3 months in the Czech Republic were spent in a state of numb, semi-conscious shock. There were torrents of tears that I had suppressed for far too long, and grueling, exhausting weekly therapy sessions over Zoom as I slowly relearned how to trust human beings and stop hunting for double meanings in every casual sentence. But slowly, layer by layer, the old skin shed, revealing a far more resilient psychological armor beneath. I had systematically severed ties with my old life. My only remaining bridge was my father. He had flown out to Prague to spend Christmas with me. We had spent days walking through the illuminated holiday markets, drinking mulled wine by the Vltava River, and it was during one of those quiet evenings by the fireplace that he finally detailed the aftermath of the blast. The Miller family had fractured permanently. My father could never forgive my mother's reaction to the revelation. Till the very end, my mother had tried to call my dad, begging him to suppress the scandal, bring Mason back to the table, and think about our social standing. She argued that Lily was just young and reckless, she made a mistake, and Mason is such a brilliant architect. Why ruin a young man's life over some private text messages? My father filed for divorce a month after the cancellation, leaving my mother with nothing but the bare minimum stipulated in the ironclad prenuptial agreement they had signed 30 years prior. As for Lily and Mason, their great, undeniable love, the romance Lily had written about so poetically in her secret logs, disintegrated under the weight of reality within weeks. Without the thrill of the taboo, without the intoxicating high of stealing someone else's joy, their relationship devolved into a toxic war zone. Mason, entirely blacklisted from every architectural association on the West Coast and ruined financially, blamed Lily for her carelessness with the tablet. Lily, stripped of her father's wealth, her social circle, and her sister, accused Mason of cowardice and opportunism. According to my father, they split by October after a massive, public screaming match that ended in a physical altercation. Mason had fled the state of Washington, dissolved his bankrupt firm, and, according to industry rumors, was now working as a low-level draftsman for a commercial construction outfit in rural Alaska, where nobody knew his name. Lily had deleted every trace of her digital footprint, moved into a dingy, one-bedroom apartment on the industrial outskirts of Portland, and was clocking shifts as a floor trainer at a budget commercial gym, barely clearing her rent. I closed my sketchbook and took a slow sip of my coffee. The sun finally shattered the morning clouds, washing the terracotta roofs of Prague in a warm, amber gold. The pain was entirely gone. Looking back at the wreckage from a year's distance, I realized that Lily and Mason, in their sheer, short-sighted malice, had handed me the greatest gift of my existence. They had extracted each other from my future, clearing the ground for something authentic to grow. Sometimes, to build an exquisite, permanent structure, a simple cosmetic renovation isn't enough. You can't just repaint the walls. You have to demolish the rotten, termite-infested foundation down to the bedrock. And burn the timber. I smiled to myself, flipped open my laptop, and immersed myself in a massive new international design project. This time, there was no gold foil embossing, just absolute, beautiful, unyielding freedom. That's all for today. Thank you for listening to Storytime Drama. If this story resonated with you, please make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!